What?
Yes, she's the executive director. Yes.
I know. I'm gonna start the recording. Not, I can give it a shift, but it won't make a difference for this evening. I can send it.
Oh, well, wait a minute. I can go up and get a scarf. You're not the only one. Roger said if she felt cool.
I could give you my jacket. I don't know that there's anything we can do.
No, we can't, we can't. She said it would take a full day to.
That's what happens when you have an older building.
All right, it won't go above where it's at for me.
That's all right, thank you. I'm gonna gavel it. Meeting will come to order. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Plaza?
Here.
Councilmember Baggett?
Here.
Councilmember Brown?
Excused.
Oh, I'm sorry, excused.
Councilmember DeCoursey?
Here.
Councilmember Holman?
Here.
Councilmember Trump Manuel?
Here?
Councilmember Wells?
Here.
We're now going to agenda item, well, first of all, council, does council have any announcements, reports, or presentations? Seeing none, we'll go to item 2A, introduction of Director of Finance, Jamie Thomas.
So we introduced Jamie to you just very briefly at the council meeting last week, but we asked that Jamie come and just share a little bit so you get to know her a little bit better.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I guess I'll just start with just a little bit of my history and where I come from. Most recently, I have come from the city of Renton. I was there for 7.5 years as the fiscal services director. So a lot of the same things there as we do here in Auburn. Prior to that, I worked for Valley Communications Center in the finance department. I've worked for the Washington State Auditor's Office, and prior to that, the city of Sumner. I got both my bachelor's in finance and my MBA from UW-Tacoma, and I'm just really happy to be here now. I really do want to extend my appreciation to staff and just the city in general. They've been so welcoming and so accommodating and so helpful. It makes me feel really good about the decision I've made to come here to the city of Auburn. So, thank you. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Just one. Okay. Just one. Are you going to bring out the cups? Did Shelley leave them for you?
Of course. I've heard all about the cups from various folks, so I would not want to not please. So I'll find the cups if I need to.
Maybe she took them with her.
I've heard a rumor she did not.
She left them. But Jamie has some great ways of doing budget work, because that was part of the interview process, was to do a half-an-hour presentation to explain, as if it were a whole new council, how the budget works. And Jamie did an outstanding job in that regard. In fact, we'll ask her to resurrect that presentation in January, when we do have at least 3 new council members.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jamie.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We will now go to item 3A, ordinance 6726.
Good evening, council. For the record, Ryan Vondrak, Capital and Construction Engineering Manager. What we have for you today is a proposed code change through ordinance. Ordinance 6726 amends section 3.12100 of the Auburn City Code, which is the limited public works process. The limited public works process is a type of bidding process for small public work. Recent legislation increased the statutory limits when using this process from $35,000 to $50,000 in lieu of referencing the statutory limit as it is stated in the Auburn City Code. This proposed code change would simply point to the RCW for the statutory limit. This would be consistent with other code change languages we have for similar processes. So if you take a look at page 6 of your packets, what we have is the stricken language is what we would propose to have removed from the city code, and the underlined language is what we would be adding. So as you can see, we would be removing the reference to 35,000, referencing the statutory limit that's in the RCWs, and then we have just some RCW language cleanup that's in the middle of that particular code. So if you have any questions, I can answer that. Otherwise, you'd see it in the...
Ryan, do we use the MRSC Small Works roster? Or
Yes,
we-
yes we do.
How come we don't show the 50,000?
It's just going to point, what this is doing is it's going to point to the RCW, and the
Yeah.
RCW references the 50,000.
Yeah, I know it would, but I don't carry an RCW book around with me all the time.
Yeah, this is the only remaining section in our city code that is still referencing the dollar amount. The other processes are following the same suit. We changed a code about 5 years ago, the small public works process, which had the limits in there. When we changed it to the statutory limit that's in the RCWs, and this would kind of follow suit with that.
Chair,
John?
if we were to put in the current limits, when the RCW inevitably changes, we'd have to do this all over again. By referencing the RCW, we're current when it's revised.
Knowing you'll probably remember the 50,000.
Well, no, I probably won't remember the 50,000. I kind of depend on staff to do that. But if I needed to look up an RCW, I could Google RCW, put in the number, and it would pop right up.
Any further questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now go to 3B as in boy, Resolution 5450.
So this resolution 5450 is really just a housekeeping item. It changes the authorized depositor and withdrawer from the previous finance director, Shelley Coleman, to more broadly state finance director as the authorized depositor and withdrawal from the LGIP. And just as reference, the state LGIP, in case you weren't aware, is the state local government investment pool, which is just a state investment program that the city takes advantage of. We deposit money in there. It acts like a liquid savings account essentially, and we're able to withdraw our money on the same day if we need to. But it earns a higher interest rate than a standard savings account.
Questions, council? Hearing none, thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to item 3C for Charlie. Justice Assistant Grant.
Good evening.
The Justice Assistance Grant, I just needed a couple minutes just to kind of make a public announcement for you and to the public. This is a new grant year of 2019. We've had this grant for years. So the City of Seattle is the primary agency that actually writes the application. We're one of the sub-grantees. This year, we're projected to get $32,106 through this grant, which is from Department of Justice. This grant, we use the money really for community policing and for law enforcement programs within the public. So we use it for our Citizens Academy to help fund officers to go to our Citizens Academy and put that on. We use it for our fireworks emphasis to help pay overtime for officers to coordinate fireworks with the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe and just do emphasis throughout the city. And we also use it to help fund extra officers for late night and teen night, during the school year. And so that's really what we use those funds for, and we usually use all of it up every single year. Any questions on that?
Do you have a written report that what you just said for us to review?
I will. This came in really late from the City of Seattle on getting this, the grant 2019 set up, and they have a deadline that's much sooner than the next City Council meeting. So I asked to be put on the agenda so I could at least talk about it. As soon as I get an MOU and we get all that, get ready to sign, then I will have a better document for you to look at.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions, council? No? Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, now we're going to go into item 4, community wellness discussion items. And Councilmember Trout Manuel is going to be taking over the meeting through A through C.
Thank you, Bill. So you're going to do it, okay. This is on annual housing report, program report. And could you please introduce yourselves?
Absolutely. Just get our presentation loaded here. Good evening. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Joy Scott, and I'm the Community Services Manager for the City of Auburn.
And I'm Duana Richards. I am the Community Programs Coordinator, fancy word for Housing Repair Coordinator, I guess. And then Joel.
I'm Joel Asbjornson. I'm going to be the new Housing Repair Coordinator, replacing Duana when she retires.
So we are very excited to be here this evening. I'm here with Duana and Joel, who are both kind of currently holding the position of Housing Repair Program Coordinator for the time being, until Duana retires in a couple of months' time. As you'll recall, the council approved a decision package during last year's budgeting process that allows the housing repair program to shift its model slightly to be able to expand our capacity a little bit and also operate the program more efficiently and in a slightly different way that we've been operating in years past. So we wanted to take this opportunity this evening to do a few things. We're hoping to provide you with a 2019 progress report of where the program is year to date, fill you in on our upcoming program changes, introduce you to Joel, who you'll be seeing in future years, giving you these annual updates, and also acknowledge all of the excellent work that's been done by Duana during her tenure here with the Housing Repair Program. And just provide a little bit of space for that. So I will, this is the slide that we, Jeff and I put together earlier this year, and we brought out at our consolidated planning session in April when I was in front of you. We just wanted to make sure to clarify that when we're talking about our housing repair program, we are just talking about our CDBG dollars, so our Community Development Block Grant. For the 2019 year, our allocation was $595,742. And among other public services and sidewalk improvements, this fund source funds our housing repair program almost in its entirety.
So it's good to be here with you again and just kind of bring you up to date on what's been happening so far in 2019 with housing repair. So I'm going to give kind of the review of what's been happening so far, and then towards the end, I'll give you a little bit of information about Joel and then pass it over to him to kind of talk a little bit about what's coming next. So first of all, just a quick review. I know I've already kind of gone over this with you probably about a year or so ago, but in terms of people qualifying for our housing repair program, there are certain things that they must meet. So number one is that they must live within our Auburn city limits. We do get a lot of calls from people who have an Auburn address, but they're not inside the city limits. So then I refer them to King County's housing repair program. They need to be the owner of the home that needs repairs. They need to be living in it, have lived in it for at least 1 year before they apply, and need to plan to stay in it for at least another year after all the repairs are done. They need to meet low to moderate income guidelines, and you can see where that is, and the majority of our people are in that 30% range that apply for a program. And once they've been approved, they can access their grant for up to 3 years until it's been used. And then they have to wait 5 years before they can apply for a new one. And we get a lot of repeat people who come back again. They'll start calling usually, am I eligible yet? No, not quite, but anyway, so it's an important thing that we offer for them. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
On that last slide,
Mhm.
in the middle of the page, meet low to moderate income guidelines.
Mhm.
So I presume that 30% would be low and 50% is moderate?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and there are some cities whose programs will go up to 80%. We did that 1 year because we always follow King County's lead. And King County decided they couldn't open it up that wide because there were too many people applying for the funding available. So we went back to 50%. So the next slide that, yes, is giving you just a snapshot comparison of some of the demographics from year to year. Just to basically show you that, things are fairly similar from year to year. 2019, you want to keep in mind that that is just half of a year. So if you double those figures, then that's what we're looking at, probably being somewhere in that range. I don't know that I need to go into a lot of detail with this. We have about 38 households that were served as of, the first part of, or the end of June, I guess that was. You can see a majority of those are female head of household, over 62 years of age. 19 out of those 38 had somebody disabled living in the home. We do keep track now of veterans who are applying. And then, the under 30% AMI or the 30 to 50 shown that. So our average cost per household is staying fairly close to around that, 5,000 or so per person range. We did just increase our dollar amount that we can spend per household. In 2018, we increased it from 5,000 being the max to 7,000. And then in some cases, we can go up to just under 10 if it's a real extensive repair, like a roof. But fortunately, not everybody needs those real expensive repairs. So then, someone may just need a water heater replaced or a furnace repaired or something like that. So then that averages things out for us.
Duana, out of the 5 years, you said you do have repeat citizens come,
Mhm.
and they have to wait 5 years to get services. Are those some that had already done the 3 years?
Yes.
And
So
what are some
yes.
of the type of repairs that they're asking?
Well, I actually have a slide coming up that kind of tells you what the main requests are, but A lot of our people, I would say over 70% of our housing repair clients live in mobile homes or manufactured homes. The homes they're in are not always real conducive to lasting in good shape for a long time, and yet that's all they have. And so those people are, I mean, the people that live in a manufactured or mobile home are often the ones that are coming back again. And, you know, maybe the first time they got a roof, but then, you know, and the roof usually takes their full grant, so then they have to wait until they can get something else fixed. And so then sometimes it's porches or steps or plumbing that's leaking or whatever, so. In terms of the projects, so here it is, the slide that says the most frequently requested projects. Plumbing repairs are at the top of the list. And you want to keep in mind that oftentimes people are requesting multiple types of repairs. So that's why these numbers won't add up exactly to 38, because most of the people are requesting several different kinds of repairs.
Mr. Pelosi, you had a question?
Yes. Looking at the path, can you go back to the last chart?
Sure.
Looking at 2019, it's the lowest for quite a few years.
Well, the reason why is because that's just half of a year. That's just 6 months worth, because we're still in 2019. So we were just trying to kind of give a comparison.
I was also thinking that maybe the neighborhoods are catching up.
They're not quite there yet.
No.
We're hopeful with the new model that, you know, we'll maybe be able to get there.
Thank you.
So you can see plumbing repairs are often our #1 requested repair, and it's probably the most important repair, because when you have leaking plumbing, it's going to cause a lot more issues if it's not taken care of. And that's one of the main reasons why we're going to be switching to doing more of our repairs in-house, which Joel will talk a little bit more about, because those are the kind of repairs that we really need to be getting to quickly. But we're struggling finding contractors to get out there and get bids back to us in a timely manner. Ever since our economy got better, they can be pickier about what types of jobs that they're taking, and where I used to have contractors calling me back in 2008 when I started working with this program, saying they wanted to get on our list. Now, you know, we're struggling to find contractors who will do this type of work. So roofs and awnings, another one. Roofs in particular, really high on the wish list, and that often will take their full grant to do that. And then the floors, walls, ceilings, that is often related to the plumbing repairs that need to be done. The other thing we find is that sometimes people didn't know about our program, and it's maybe been years that they've been in the situation that they've been in just because they didn't know, and then finally somebody says something, and then they apply. So we're going in and dealing with holes in floors and all of that. So I guess we can go to the next one.
Yes, Mr. Pelosi?
So, Duana, how do we do can you explain to us, the council, how we do the outreach for this program?
So the main outreach is actually by word of mouth, and also all of the park managers know about the program. We've, you know, placed it somewhat in some of the city, you know, newsletters and things, but we've been hesitant to do that too much because we already have such a long wait list. We're not wanting to create a longer one. The senior center is also very aware of our program, and we get a lot of referrals through the senior center as well. But I would say it's primarily senior center and mobile home park managers all know about us. King County, if someone is looking for housing repairs and they call King County, they all refer to us. We get referrals also from some of the community programs that, you know, where someone is going in like a social worker or whatever, and they're seeing that someone needs a ramp or needs grab bars or something like that. So we get referrals from them too. But we have not done an extensive all-out ad campaign, so to speak. And honestly, the reason for that is because we don't have the capacity to deal with what would probably come our way if we did that. I mean, just being honest, because the money is usually gone before the end of the year, as it is. So there's a few before and after pictures here. Plumbing under the sink. We're getting more and more requests, I think, as we have an aging population, for doing the conversion from a tub to a walk-in shower. Not cheap. Before and after on a roof. And so you can see a big difference there. And then this is a before and after. This person had leaking plumbing, which had caused her floor to go out. She was in a wheelchair. And so you can kind of see there the before and after with that. So.
Do you want to do some of these people that live on their own, do they have social workers or something like that to detect some of these problems before it gets that bad?
Some may, but many of these people don't. I find out that sometimes in my job, I end up, you know, referring them to other services as well, because they're just not aware of it. And I think we're finding that there's probably more and more people that are isolated, that are living totally on their own without family or anybody to help them. I mean, you know, it's heartbreaking, some of the things that you see out there.
Thank you.
We have another before and after that's a furnace that just happened to be housed in the same area as the water heater. And then heat pump. That's another thing we get a lot of requests for, because the heat pumps can help reduce the cost of their utilities considerably, both in the summer and winter. So, and then this was a little Asian lady whose steps were getting were not in good shape, and she came in, she very hesitant to ask for help. That's the other thing, is we often get people who really don't want to have to ask for help. They've never had to before, but her husband passed. She's living on very limited income, and so we were able to redo her steps for her and put in. So before I have Joel talk to you about the program, I just wanted to tell you that it's always been my goal to leave something better than I found it. And so I feel that I am confidently doing that by having you folks hire Joel. He comes to us from the city of Renton. He was working with their housing repair program there for 6 years, and I'm sure he can give you a little bit more of his background too, if you'd like. But and before that, he had his own home repair business as well. And so what's wonderful is he understands construction. He knows, he'll know how to talk to the contractors. He'll know if somebody is bidding way beyond what they should be or not. So I think it's an exciting direction that we're going, and happy to be headed.
Thank you, Don. Thank you for those words. I appreciate that. And I do hope to fill your shoes. You've been. So myself, I do come from the city of Renton. I was a housing repair tech up there for 6.5 years. Before that, I had my own business for 7 years, and then before that, I was in just construction, different companies doing remodels and condos and homes, and new commercial too. And so where we're going is Duana, she gets the new clients in, but she has to rely on the city inspectors, which have always gone out to do the inspection. And now I can go out and put my eyes on it and really get in depth and investigate what is going on. And I can spend my time doing that and get a true answer, or hopefully at least, look at what's going on. The city inspectors don't have the time to, do that. And so that's one thing that I hope will make a big difference, and because I can get the right contractor out there to investigate if we are contracting in, as we are taking this in-house. We just posted for that job last Friday, so hopefully we'll get some good applicants for that one, and we'll see what we can do in-house, and hopefully, I haven't looked at any numbers. I don't know what we're going to do in-house, but hopefully a very large portion of what we contract out we can bring in-house now and make speedier repairs. When we've got a plumbing leak going on, I've seen Duana send out requests for bids, and 6-8 months later there's no answer, and we have nobody to go do the work, and meanwhile that leak has not stopped. It's probably gotten worse, which makes the whole situation worse. So hopefully we will definitely be able to respond to those quicker and get out there and stop that leak. And of course, we won't have to do the 3 bids on the in-house. We can just go take care of it. That's going to save a lot of time.
When you say we, does that mean you too?
I will be in the field, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I will be there to help and support the tech, and cover when he can't. And, I may go, I'll go probably check out the emergency kind of stuff, and at least if we, get my eyes on it, see if I can get it under control. If I can't, obviously I won't make a repair that day more than likely, but if we can get a water leak stopped, definitely help a lot.
You'll make some very happy people.
And we're going to also move towards, life safety stuff, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. We're not currently doing that. Grab bars, we'll be able to offer those more readily and get those, to the people before they absolutely need them or, have a fall. Hopefully we can do some prevention there.
So we just wanted to take this opportunity to give you an update on where we are. Obviously, we're moving forward with our hiring process and implementing all of these program changes. And we also, as we go forward, Joel and myself will be the program contacts for our housing repair program internally. But we also wanted to take this opportunity to recognize Duana for all of the wonderful work that she's done with our residents in the community to really help them within this program, because it's really made a big difference in people's lives. So.
And you're right, she's going to be missed, because not only did she wear that hat, she wore many other hats, in the city. So you will be missed, but I know you've got plans already for your retirement. So thank you for all your hard work. Thank you both for giving a great presentation. Any questions before they leave?
More of a statement. I really want to, this program's been in existence for many years, and you've been at the heart of it all those years, but given that the target audience for this are older, fixed, low-income widows living alone in their own home, this is the only thing between homelessness or independence. And for the money spent here, it's far more economical than dealing with someone who has a house that's condemned. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
And I hear that every day from people. If you knew all, I've seen all the people that are just in tears. And I tell them, I said, you need to send a thank you to the council and mayor, because our city supports this program that we have it. Not every city has it. We have people calling from other cities. Can I apply for your program and stuff? So it's a good thing that you guys are supporting for people. It's making a difference for them.
Mr. Baggett, do you have a question?
More of a statement like John had. Having been the president of 2 homeowner associations, I know that many of our residents have taken advantage of these opportunities in the past, and I believe that it made quite a difference in their lives. And Most of them, like John indicated, were of a senior nature and, living on very, very fixed incomes. So I plan to actually spread the word where I'm now living, because that's another new association, and make sure that they are aware that these services are available. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. DeCoursey.
That's right. I think also stated, Councilmember Baggett touched on it, but we both live in the same community. And a few months ago, one of my neighbors is 2 doors down, had their roof replaced. I was talking to the contractor, and they mentioned that this is through the city of Auburn. So we had a conversation, and they did the work in 2 days, which was just phenomenal. But serving the need of people, in our community, like Councilmember Baggett says, there is an awareness there, and we'll bring it to even more awareness. But I've seen people talk to people, and we've seen others come into the community doing other work because of that communication process overall. But what's really exciting here is we first heard about bringing this in-house, and now it's here. And that's really exciting to see, especially doing it ourselves, and as I said in the slide, to be able to assist more clients. That's the key to this whole thing, and we all know how slow contracting can be, and to bring it in-house is just even more exciting to see this program come to fruition. So looking forward to some great things. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is multi-family property inspection. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Chris Barrick. I'm the Code Compliance Officer for the City of Auburn. And tonight I am going to be talking to you about multifamily property inspections. PowerPoint here for you. The presentation I'm giving tonight is a follow-up to a past session back in April where staff had presented some information regarding multifamily programs and tenant protections. And at that time, Council had requested some additional information, what a program might look like here in the City of Auburn, and asked us to go to work. And so the last few months, myself and my staff have gone to work and kind of looked at some different options. We'll talk about those tonight. Really good reading, the healthy housing standards I want to talk about tonight also, and as well as our current multifamily inspections, what they look like when they're required, and where we go, some recommendations from there as well. We currently have 470 licensed multifamily properties here in the city that are duplex or larger. That number is a constant moving target. Prior to 2016, there really was no direction or expectation from the city that was portrayed to property owners and or managers. And in 2016, we came up with the SAFER program, which set some expectations, kind of laid some ground rules out, and put forth some effort. And part of that was an 8-hour mandatory training session that all managers and owners had to participate in, as well as those ground rules and expectations from the city. Since 2016, we have achieved approximately 98% voluntary compliance with that, and we feel that that's really been built through the solid rapport that we've built with these managers and property owners, just by getting out in the community and talking with them and letting them know what the program is, why it's a good program. We do have that small percentage that were mandated to go to the training, and I'm happy to say that we've gotten 100% so far through our program. And as I said, it's going to be something that's going to be a revolving. When managers change, when owners change, we will require new owners, new managers to go through that training as well. One of the exhibits that is in your packet is our multifamily inspection form. Currently, our requirement is if Auburn Police Department refers a property to us for inspection based on crimes or other things, then we do have a mandatory inspection. Otherwise, the inspection is voluntary. We've had approximately 25 inspections over the years, and of those, we've had really good success with property owners realizing that they have issues with their properties, and spending the money and the time and the resources to improve those properties. And we feel that those are our best customers. Those are really not the ones that we really need to focus on when it comes to inspections. And this current inspection is only for exterior property. It doesn't do anything with interior property. So we currently don't have any mandatory interior inspection requirements. Again, one of the items in your packet is the.
Just a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. DeCourse,
Yeah,
Mr.
Yes.
thank you.
Pelosi.
Also, I lost my question. Damn.
Okay.
I'll recall it later.
I
Jump out of-
have a really quick question.
Okay,
really
sure.
quick. You said out of the 25 inspections, you just do the exterior, not the interior?
Just the exterior, yes.
Who does the interior?
The interior, there's no requirement for that, so it would be upon the manager or the owner of the property to do any inspections that they require through their standards. There's nothing in city code that mandates an interior inspection.
Okay.
And one thing that we do talk about at that manager training is this voluntary inspection. We offer this form, and it's given to the managers and property owners in their packet that they get at that training, and we invite them to do kind of a self-assessment. It's kind of lets them know where they rank amongst their peers in the city here, and it's been a really positive experience so far. But you can see the numbers. We've had 25 volunteers out of 470, so it's trying to figure out what the happy median is for that. I know there's other jurisdictions that have mandatory inspections. Auburn's unique. We are not the city that follows suit to everybody. We kind of make our own path. We are that city that finds a need and comes with several solutions and does the best for the residents. So we're trying to move forward with something that's going to benefit everybody.
Mr. Pelosi.
My question is along those same lines. As code enforcement, have you ever thought about interior inspections?
We do interior inspections when we're invited in. To date, we haven't. There's nothing on code that I'm aware of that requires a property owner to let us in without a search warrant.
How about other cities? Have you guys checked that out? What other cities do on internal?
I have not done checks to see which cities do internals versus just external. Like I said, in this program, I wanted to look at different facets and try to figure out something that really worked for Auburn. Again, I know that I've heard there are other municipalities. I believe Kent might do them, but Kent is not Auburn, and I want to make sure that whatever we put forth works for Auburn.
Well, based on the low income that we do have in Auburn, it would seem to me that it would be beneficial to initiate internal inspections before they get to be a real problem.
Discrimination and a half. You can't do that. That's discrimination.
Mrs. Wells?
If you're living in like a duplex and you're not the owner, you're just the renter, can you ask your group to come in and do an inspection as the renter?
Absolutely, yeah. So if we have.
Because the issues that I have concerned about as I work with young kids are allergies, and we're getting beyond with some of the building codes and ages where we have to worry about lead paint so much, but we have the mold and some of these other things that really impact allergies and whatever for young kids.
Absolutely. We currently deal with that from a code compliance standpoint. So if we get a call from a resident that says, I've got mold in my unit, and they invite us in,
Right.
we absolutely can go in, yeah.
So then what do you do after you've been, you've come in and found mold all over? Do you write it up on a report and give it to them, or do you give it to the landlord, or where does it
We
go?
open up, we try to determine what the cause of it. Sometimes there are a few cases where it has been tenant-induced.
Yeah.
And so those kind of ties our hands. We will let the owner know that, hey, there is mold in this unit, this duplex, this home. Probably want to do something with the tenant to try to resolve that because the living conditions are not great. If it's something that is not tenant-induced, we try to figure out, to the best of our ability, what caused it. Mold requires moisture, and generally it's a leak, like Duana was talking about, a plumbing leak. It could be a faulty gutter. Water is evil. It finds the path of least resistance and gets in everywhere, and so you don't know it until it starts to grow. So we go after really the defect in the structure that causes the mold, because if you take care of that, it will take care of the mold. So.
Jeff?
Thank you. One thing to add to Chris's answer is that back in April, I did provide a presentation to council on multifamily inspections, what the RCW says with respect to what a city may implement and what some of the surrounding jurisdictions are doing. So it might be good to, I know Chris is going to get to a point in here where he has some ideas on things that might help that I think code enforcement would like council to consider. Before getting into that, if you recall, there are limitations on what a city can require. So there was a requirement that we can't demand an inspection more than every 3 years, that we have to offer the option for the property owner to hire a third party to conduct those inspections. And really the only time that the city is allowed to enter outside of a search warrant under those laws is when there is a failure to comply with the inspection reports and ongoing issues, compliance issues, where we can start requiring entry into more units than what is set forth in the state laws. So I don't want to get in front of where Chris is going with this, but it might be useful for me to forward, it's been a few months, so it might be useful for me to forward that summary as you contemplate what the recommendation forward will be.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. In this national housing standards, it works very closely to our current code that's been adopted, the International Property Maintenance Code. But I think what's nice about this is it takes it one step higher. And I've listed some examples. Two that are really strike me is security. Our current code requires that you have secure doors and windows. I mean, that's pretty easy to think of. But if a tenant moves out, it doesn't talk about rekeying that house or that unit. And so your next tenant moves in, and who knows how many keys to that if it's never been rekeyed. Another one is for pest extermination. Currently, our code says that pests must be eliminated. We don't have any prescribed methods. In the National Housing Standards, it does require professional managed pest control. So I think, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, I think that looking forward about maybe adopting these standards to help give code enforcement some additional tools in our tool belt to really make houses healthy. I want to talk, the next couple slides will kind of interact with each other. The pros and cons kind of mesh and are repeated a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about mandatory inspections and then compliance-based inspections. Again, currently the Auburn Police Department can refer us a property that they feel needs to be inspected, and we'll go out and do our mandatory inspection. But again, that's just the exterior. Looking forward at an interior inspection, I think mandatory inspections, the pros are we get to look inside every property every 3 to 5 years per the state code or per the state laws. It'll give us better living conditions for all Auburn residents that are living in multifamily properties. Less vulnerable more vulnerable populations who fear retaliation don't have to call us and report it. It's a huge pro. But you'll see also at the same time, that could cause bad situations. If we're making it mandatory that we go inside a property, duplex or larger, every 3 to 5 years and doing an internal inspection, there might be unhealthy living conditions for you and I, but we have to also take into consider the people who are living in these homes. That may not be an unhealthy living condition for them. I'm not talking about mold or bug infestations or things like that, but I might walk into a property and realize that I might not want to live there personally, but the alternative is, because it's a violation potentially of what's called in this standard a stretch provision, might cause homelessness, and that is counterproductive. We don't want to do that. We want to be sensitive and compassionate to the situations that people are living in, but also make them healthy. Is it more healthy to live in a place that may be a little bit dirty? It's not in as nice of condition aesthetically, but is safe, doors locked, windows locked, it's heated or air conditioned, or is it safer to live underneath the bridge? So we want to be really sensitive about what the mandatory versus maybe code compliance-based inspections would be.
So, does the code inspector only check the front yards? Do they, because if you go into the backyard, you have to have permission before you go into the backyard,
Correct.
right? And do you have to have just cause to be able to go to the backyard, or how does that work?
We present it in a way that when we're talking with people, we already know the answer to the question, but we're going to ask the question of if there's a condition in the backyard. We act as, I don't want to say act, but we present ourselves in a way that we know there's something going on. Can we take a look, and it may not be as bad as it was reported to us. And so we're very good about getting into those conditions and taking a look and really assessing them. We do have property owners that say, no, I'm not going to allow you to enter my property. There are ways, if we could see it from a next door neighbor property, if it's a 2-story next to the house, we can knock on that door and say, do you mind, especially if it's the complainant. We've been invited into their home to go up to their 2nd-story balcony, and from there we can see the violation, and we don't need to gain entry. So yeah, we have ways of getting around it.
I've had neighbors that have called and asked me, what is the code's, enforcements? How can they report a neighbor there, because they can overlook into their yard, and so that's why I asked the question. Mrs. Wells?
This might be a question for the attorney, but if we were to go to mandatory inspections inside, outside for multiple housing units, I drive by many, or few, homes coming to and from City Council that are single-family units that probably wouldn't pass even the exterior. Are we being discriminatory by assuming that all of our problems are in multiple housing units if we don't have a similar type program for, I feel like we're just sitting here and kind of assuming that all of our problems are in multiple housing units when we've got problems other places.
I agree, and there are codes that pertain to that as well.
Okay.
Not interior or mandatory interior inspections. Again, it's a little bit easier, I think, with a single-family residence, because you generally have the tenant living in there, and they can call us and say we're having an issue and invite us in. Where we may be asked to leave a property if we're on a multifamily property where there is a manager or potentially an owner, and I want to look in unit 7 of 300, and they realize that we're on the property and they ask us to leave, we have to leave. So I understand what you're saying, and yes, it may be something that legal may need to intervene
Go
with.
ahead, Ms. Wells.
The other thing I think of that is a real con to this whole thing is that the level of staffing that it would require.
Absolutely, and I've got a slide, I think it's the next slide, that we'll talk about that a
Because
little bit.
we don't have enough now
Absolutely.
to do just driving up the street, looking at single families. And then this would be a significant burden, additional burden. And then if we did it for multiple families, I think we'd have to really step it up for what's going on in.
I absolutely agree, and I'll
Okay.
brush on that.
So I'm really worried about the balance, the equity,
Me too.
the issue of appearing insensitive to different kinds of groups. And dirt is, I've got a lot of dirt at my house, a lot of dirt. Not many problems probably, but I got a lot of dirt. 2 dogs.
And you'll see an option in here that I think will help address some concerns of yours.
Thank you.
That will, we think it's the best of all worlds. And so I'll present that here very shortly.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. DeCoursey?
Well, and I fully understand your concern about the single family.
Even though I wear white.
You do, yeah. But I'm talking about the multifamily. Many property management companies have their own internal protocol for doing inspections of units. Not all of them, and of course, not those that are kind of not corporate owned, but there is a regular process they use for inspections. So I don't think the full burden should be on the city, in my opinion. The other piece of this is that when you look at properties in Auburn that are owned by the Housing Authority, for example, Housing Authority has their protocol. They're also doing inspections of their properties, both internal and external, to actually maintain the quality standards of the property overall. Yes, tenants can call and make inquiries about issues they have, and it's addressed. And Housing Authority has a full maintenance staff that handles all this. And also, when you look at the folks that are holding a Section 8 voucher, wherever they're renting, be it apartment, single-family home, or whatever, they're inspected once a year as part of a federal program. So that takes place, and it is happening. And I'm not saying it's the majority of properties in Auburn, but we know there are some that are having that protocol taken care of already. And I think as we go a little bit further into this, when we look at a mandatory inspection, we've talked about this quite often, but the mandatory inspection internally of all the properties, maybe a little bit too much for the city to take on at this time.
I agree with that, and that we'll see a little later on in the presentation. And I think it also penalizes our model properties. You've got a model property who is living up to the expectations of the city. They're going above and beyond the national healthy housing standards. And now the city's going to impose an inspection when we don't have complaints or violations on those properties. I don't think that's a good use of our time. I think that damages the rapport that code compliance and law enforcement have built with these communities to establish we're here to help. But oh, by the way, we're gonna cost you $10,000 a year in mandatory inspections that you're going to pass with flying colors. We want to go after the inattentive owners and managers, the ones that are letting their buildings deteriorate, that the living conditions inside are subpar. Brings us to kind of the options, a couple of options that we would like to present. Option number 1, and actually option 2 does the same thing, is to adopt the national healthy housing standards. It gives code compliance an additional tool to help us in ensuring that we are requiring owners and managers to keep their properties healthy. In option 1, it would be a mandatory 3 to 5 year inspection for all multifamily properties, duplex or larger, within the city. And the last point there, it's been talked about, is staff. It's going to require staff to be hired to implement, manage that program. The second side of that is that we continue to use Auburn Police Department as our standard as well. they can refer properties to us currently. We continue doing that. But we don't have anything on the code enforcement side, and we see a lot of things in the city that we would like to go farther with, but don't have tools that allow us to do that. And so we've talked internally about, if there's more than 3 code violations on any given property, multifamily, duplex or larger, that in a 12-month period, we require that mandatory inspection. That triggers that mandatory inspection of the inside. And then that would require some amendments to either Title V or 15 to help support the healthy housing standards. And the nice thing about that is, I really think that the current code compliance staff is going to be able to manage those cases. I don't think that we are going to get to a point where we have so many because they're not mandatory. I don't have the number in front of me, but very few properties where we have multiple violations year after year after year. It's generally a very, very small percentage, and I think it's a very manageable number for the current staff. And then through our outreach and programs, we continue to educate property owners and managers about healthy housing standards. So what now? Where do we go? I wanted to bring forward all this information to council and mayor tonight to talk about what the next steps are. I'd like to, at a future session, bring forward some recommendations which will amend Title V and 15 for consideration to help support the healthy housing standards. I'd like to include in that adopting the healthy housing standards, which would include that piece that would allow code enforcement to really go after those inattentive owners and managers that have 3 violations in a 12-month period.
I have to go, Mrs. Ross.
Okay, I'm just going to help you. I was on the Seattle King County Board of Health for 2 or 3 years, and I was on the subcommittee that dealt with the healthy housing standards. Has the national healthy housing standards been adopted by the Seattle King County Board of Health?
I don't believe they have. I believe the only local jurisdiction, to my knowledge, is Tukwila.
Yeah.
That has adopted it, and so there's not a lot out there. And when you read through this, and you have it side by side with the IPMC, the International Property Maintenance Code, they're very similar. And on that example page, I showed 3 examples, but there's lots of different examples in there. And what's nice about this standard is it's readable. There's a couple different provisions. They give stretch provisions, and then they give rationale, and it really breaks it down into plain language that most people can understand that aren't living in code books every day for a living. And so I think it's a really good thing for the city.
When we were looking at it on the Board of Health, we liked it because we don't want to put ourselves up against builders by requiring, specific things that increase their burden. We just want to have healthy housing. So,
absolutely.
Yes, and it was very, very practical. Yeah.
I just have to say that during National Nights Out, we ended up going to an apartment complex. And the people are just brand new managers. They talked about taking that training that you gave. They've been there 4 months. They've done so much remodeling, carpets, and the clients, the people that live there, the residents. I asked them if there was any issues that they had with the city. They go, no. I just want to tell you that we are so happy. We got a new manager. I got new curtains for the first time, and I've lived here 15 years. And I looked at her curtains, and I could see why she needed new curtains. But, the people that took over that place says that that place needed so much work, and they've only have done half of it's 24 units, so they've only done the whole upstairs, and they're still working on the bottom. It's a husband and wife, and they came from Boeing. They retired and became apartment managers. Okay. So you guys, that training you gave must have really helped them out. So.
And we actually, it's funny you talk about the training. We have managers and owners that they're required to go to one 8-hour course in the lifetime. We're looking at newer programs that we can do to enhance and continued education and things like that. But we have some managers that we actually have to say, I'm sorry, our class is already full. I mean, if you want to stand in the back of the room, please attend. But we have managers that have come through 4 and 5 times, and those are not the properties that we're looking to change. We want to go after the ones that, in this case, the 2%, the inattentive owners, the inattentive managers that are getting away with things they shouldn't be getting away with.
Well, I think this apartment sounded like they were getting away with stuff because these people coming in and fixing, and the clients that were there were still happy. They made several comments.
So I just want to share that I usually have the good fortune of doing a welcome before those trainings begin in the morning. And I have, the first one that I ever attended, I saw a few very unhappy faces sitting around the table like, what am I doing here? How dare you require me to sit through this training? I don't need to be here. Who do you think you are? And by the end of the day, they were engaged, they were appreciative of the information that had been provided to them, and their perspective on why we were offering this training and why it's mandatory for them to take at least one 8-hour training was something that they finally saw a value in. So I just want to say kudos to Chris and Tammy and George and our CRT officers and everyone else that comes in to talk with these property managers or property owners. This isn't our intent, even in code enforcement, is never to just arrest or find problem. It's to advocate and educate first and foremost before there's ever any enforcement. And that's exactly what this program does, and the approach that Chris is talking about of adopting those standards and only doing the mandatory inspections if there are code enforcement violations really allows Chris and his team to build on the relationships that they have created in this community and the trust. Right? There is a great deal of trust, and the SAFER program that he mentioned at the beginning, I went out with the first round of certificates for those property managers or owners that wanted to be in the SAFER program. And that's Safe Auburn for every resident. And they were so proud of what they had done. The goal is to have a 0 score, correct?
Yes, it's like golf. I don't golf much, but
Yeah.
the lower the score,
The
the
lower
better.
your score, the better. And one of the places that we went to, the gentleman had received a 1, and he was going to go back and try again so he could get a 0.
He was upset with that 1.
He was upset with the
wow.
1, and we were so thrilled that he was one of the first participants. But there's really a great deal of work that's been done by Chris and Tammy and George and Jeff and others to ensure the safety for our residents in this community. It's not perfect, but with the trust that they're building and the opportunities to work with tenants, I think we will get there, and in a much more collaborative way than if there was an enforcement going on.
Thank you for the kind words. I agree with you 100%. It's
Just
we really need to build that trust with our clientele, because it's so much easier to walk with them than walk towards them. So,
Mr. Holman and then Mr. Baker.
Well, I would be in favor of pursuing option 2, just me. I don't know what my colleagues feel, and adopting
Could you go back to the option?
just a recommendation, yeah, option 2, and following the recommendation to adopt the national healthy housing standards and having you start work on preparing something to bring forward would be my opinion. And then a quick statement. You have a historical good relationship with the police department. And so it's amazing what you can see as a cop just pursuing their day. And you have this great relationship with the police department already. So some training with the police department on what to look for and to bring forward to you without violating people's rights.
Absolutely.
And given the attitude of our code enforcement of compliance and correction rather than punitive actions, I think I'd be solidly in favor of option 2 and having you proceed forward with bringing something to us. The rest is up to my colleagues.
Okay, Mr. Baggett.
Yeah, just to indicate an advocacy for this program, the SAFER program, I had the opportunity as deputy mayor last year to sit in on some of those meetings, and I was very impressed with all of the people that were participating in there, not only from the training standpoint, but also from the audience. I didn't experience what the mayor had experienced. Mostly, they were attentive and they were really grateful for having that opportunity, because it also made their facilities safer.
Absolutely.
Not to quote a pun, but basically, it struck me as being something that if we would adopt option 2, for example, I could see the opportunity there to enter that into that SAFER program and enforce it even more. So I think the SAFER program is great.
Thank you.
Mrs. Wu, I see you.
What do you mean by amend Title V and/or 15 to support healthy housing standards? Because if we went with option 1, I really don't see any difference between option 1 and option 2, other than option 1 requires additional staff. So
Option 1 would be required, or I'm sorry, we would require mandatory inspections of all multifamily properties every 3
they're
to
referred or not. Okay.
regardless. We would start at the top and work our way down the list. Option 2 really targets the inattentive owners and managers that need that. And in Title V and Title 15, Title V is our business license code that houses our rental license information. And so we would make any amendments that needed to be more in line with the healthy housing standards. And Title 15 is our property maintenance code. And so we would want to amend, that's where we adopt the international codes as well, which is where we would need to adopt the national.
So that would be also an option 1?
Potentially, yes.
Any further questions for Chris? Yes, Mr. Wu?
Not a question, but it's our job to find consensus of whether he's to continue or not in this line of work.
All right. But before that, Mr.
Well, just to follow up on that.
DeCoursey.
Chris, you've made a recommendation, and I agree with the recommendation and your statements regarding working with property owners. And again, I'm not in favor of putting who knows how many staff together to do this every 3 to 5 years. And we don't even know if the program will be successful on that.
Yeah.
In fact, okay? So I think the option 2, looking at going after that 2% and those issues that become problematic, is where our focus should be.
So with the raise of hands, how many?
We can't do that.
Oh, we can't, but we're giving him we're giving him the
Please
option
bring
to go
something
ahead and bring
forward.
something forward. Okay. So the consensus are that you can do that.
And I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight. Have a good evening.
God, everybody got me on that one.
Lucky.
It's a thin line.
I know it. Okay. Next is Human Services. And please again, introduce yourselves.
Again, thank you so much again for having us this evening. I'm Joy Scott, and I am our Community Services Manager.
Hi everyone, I'm Kyla Wright. I'm the Human Services Program Coordinator.
Welcome.
Thank you. So we are here to provide an update on agencies that the city funds through our Human Services program. So unlike our earlier presentation this evening where we were talking about our CDBG dollars, during our presentation this evening we're going to focus on our general fund human services dollars. These are the recommendations that are initially made by the Human Services Committee and voted and adopted by the council as part of the budget process. It's competitive funding for nonprofit agencies who provide services to residents in our community. So you will recall that last year in about September and October, I provided some presentations to the council along with Emily Pearson on recommendations for agencies to be funded as part of your budget discussion and deliberation process. There was $490,000 that was set aside for the 2019 to 2020 biennial budget that was allocated to 52 programs across 39 agencies. I apologize, there was a typo in your agenda bill description, but the slide is correct. As part of this process, programs that receive funding from the City of Auburn through our Human Services program have to serve Auburn residents, meet one of Auburn's human services funding priorities that are set by City Council, submit quarterly reports, and undergo program monitoring, in addition to other requirements around insurance and our contracting process that we work with them on. So we wanted to give you a mid-year 2019 report on how our agencies are doing, what trends we're seeing, and what we're hearing from our partners in the community. And this is just a kind of reminder from last year. You might recall across those programs, the $490,000 that was allocated, we really had a wide range of services that those dollars went towards for folks in our community. So you can see the programs here broken out by type of service that they provide, and that we really have quite a range that we are funding with our Human Services program.
So within the first half of this year, from January through the end of June, the human services agencies that were funded provided across all of the different programs 13,472 bed nights, over 2,000 hours of case management, 43 different trainings and workshops, almost 11,000 meals served, and 359 hours of legal services across the different programs.
On those 43 training and workshops, what kind of training and workshops did they have to attend?
Sure, so it depends on the different agency, but for example, there might be a workshop on like a counseling workshop or a legal service workshop versus one-on-one counseling. So specific to the different agency and program, a workshop that they'll provide to community members.
When you say community, I'm sorry, when you say community members, who are those?
Auburn residents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Homeless people or just Auburn?
Auburn residents, across the board. It depends on what the service provided is. It could be, for example, for legal counsel, pro bono legal counsel or something like that. It could be any number of services that the agency provides.
Thank you.
So the trends that we're seeing across the different agencies, and this is again very broad strokes across all 50 agencies, but some things that we're seeing based on the quarterly reports that are submitted, so based on the first half of this year. We're seeing really strong provider partnerships and cross collaborations in order to deliver effective services to Auburn residents. We're also seeing that affordable housing shortages continues to present housing stability challenges. That could be in terms of rental increases for folks who have housing, so that housing then no longer becomes affordable due to those increases. It also presents some barriers for folks hoping to move into permanent housing. So it might be folks who are currently unhoused, and affordable housing is a significant barrier to becoming housed. Providers are also coming up with very resourceful solutions to meet complex needs for Auburn residents. So in addition to those strong partnerships, folks are being really creative on how they're managing solutions and coming up with solutions for folks. Procuring employment is a significant barrier to stability for residents. Folks either might be underemployed or not employed, and that employment can create a significant barrier. And we're seeing an increased need for rental and utility assistance. So in situations where utility bills might be significantly high one month, that is a critical need and gap for folks to be stabilized in their housing and living situation.
Yes, that's one of my areas of primary concern, because a utility bill or a rental amount, you can be 1 month away from being homeless. How are we doing at this point in financially in meeting the needs or the requests that we're getting in that area? Because I see this as one step towards helping to turn down the spigot of the flow of homelessness. So how is the funding working at this midpoint in the year?
Sure. So we don't provide those resources directly, but there are a couple of agencies that the City of Auburn funds to provide emergency assistance, including rent and utility assistance,
Okay.
Including Multi-Service Center and St. Vincent de Paul. There are some other programs in our community that also offer those types of assistance. We heard from both of those agencies that they really struggled after the snowstorms that we had in the beginning of the year, because there were across the board significantly higher utility bills than folks were used to seeing, and they were much farther behind than they might otherwise have been had we not had such severe temperatures. So all of our agencies that are providing rent and utility assistance have gone beyond their targets so far at this point in the year, but certainly they struggle with a significant need and limited resources.
Have we given any consideration, realizing that they're struggling at this time of year and it's July and we still have December to go through and maybe November, of holding having a catastrophic fund that we just kind of set aside in case we need something like that?
So we don't have that. The recommendations that were brought to council were for a set amount of agencies, and the dollars were fully allocated to those agencies, so there weren't any additional funds set aside during the budgeting process for that. Each agency manages its funds differently, so some only open up funds on a particular week of the month and only make a certain amount available per month in order to budget throughout the year. But that's kind of an agency-to-agency policy decision.
I'd like you to consider, when you work with your committee, of seeing if we need to have some fallback catastrophic funding for an unusual year like we had, just because of the issue of homelessness.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mr. DeCoursey, let's remember that, so when we meet with Mr. Tate, we can mention that to him. Okay, thank you. You want to go on?
Sure. So as part of for Human Services Committee, part of the role for the committee is to conduct site visits to various agencies throughout the year. This year, and some of this predates my time here, but there have been 4 agency visits this year. One of the agencies visited was PIC, the Pediatric Interim Care Center. We went to the agency in the beginning of June, I believe. And the committee was really impressed with the quality of intensive care that is provided, also balanced with a very welcoming environment. It can be a tough balancing act to manage that level of care with the compassion that they do, and they do it quite well.
That's here in Auburn?
No, it's in Kent.
It's in Kent.
It's in Kent.
Yeah.
they have target goals for serving Auburn residents, so it's something, it's a very, I think it might be the only facility of its kind in the region, so having it available to all residents and Auburn residents should the need come up.
One of the other site visits that we escorted some of our Human Services Committee members on was to Children's Therapy Center. They provide in-home services as well as having multiple locations for folks to visit. We did a site visit to their Kent location. They also have a Burien location and provide therapeutic in-home care for residents where they are. I will apologize for a moment because my notes are not visible on the screen here, but I did want to share a success story that they shared with us about an Auburn resident. So they let us know that Patrick was born 3 months premature with a cerebral palsy diagnosis. His mother sought therapy services immediately and found Children's Therapy Center to help Patrick with physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and orthotics. And the screen is frozen. Patrick has been able to overcome many obstacles, including learning how to walk up the stairs as a toddler in order to be able to take the school bus. He now enjoys basketball, swimming, and more. They say that Patrick would not be the person that he is without the help of city funding, and they are very grateful for the City of Auburn's ongoing support. We had a very enlightening visit there where we learned about the range of work that they're doing and how unique they are in the services that they provide. It's something that we heard about a lot of our agencies that we're funding during this cycle, that there are a lot of programs out there that are really one of a kind that wouldn't exist without this kind of city funding.
I want to just we have a few spotlights, yeah, and I just want to be aware of our time, so I might hop through a couple of these slides, but
Okay.
there's a
Go ahead.
question.
Going back
Can you wait, or can you?
Pardon?
Can you wait for the question so she can get through those, please?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll just
No problem.
Wait your question.
Got it.
So there's a few different residents. We tried to highlight a good mix of newer funded agencies, smaller agencies, and a good mix. So if you have time and want to read through the narratives that are listed there, they're really great. But I will just pop to the last one, just to give a quick overview. So with Catholic Community Services, there's a program that we fund there, Home and W Home, is a shelter service in Kent, partnering with rotating locations with various religious organizations with some really comprehensive shelter services. So this is a story about one gentleman, his initials AT, became homeless last year. He lost his job and does not have family or friends to support him. The home shelter helps provide AT to get stability. He secured a job a few months after staying in the shelter. He's also been working with some mental health professionals to address some of his mental health concerns. Last month, he moved into an apartment complex. Stephanie, who is the home manager, referred him to the diversion program through Coordinated Entry for All, CEA as it's often referred to, which helped AT with his security deposit. AT came back and connected with Catholic Community Services to let them know that he has been doing great, and because of the partnership that they had with St. Vincent de Paul, they were able to supply AT with a furniture voucher to get a bed for his new residence. So a really poignant, I think, story that illustrates not only the collaboration that different agencies have, but the impact that can have for Auburn residents.
We want to be respectful of your time this evening, but we did include in the slides so that you can read them at your leisure a couple of other stories that really highlight the collaboration between our agencies and the ways in which they really work together to ensure that multiple needs are met for our community members, our residents in Auburn. So we did also include a story from a multi-service center, a success story with an Auburn resident, and also a story from Mother Africa of a client that they've been working with. So we want to make sure that we're within our time limits for this evening, but please feel free to go back to your packets and read those at a later time.
Thank you, but let's have Ms. Wells do her last question.
My last question is, would it be possible for you, without using names, to go back to Children's Therapy Center and the student that you were, or child that you were referring to that was getting OTPT, probably speech and language services, and riding a school bus? Then if he's riding a school bus, it's being paid for by the Auburn School District if he's an Auburn citizen. Could you tell me, find out for me what services he's getting over and above what the school district is paying for and what is over what his medical insurance is paying for that our money is paying for? What additional services he's receiving?
You can certainly reach out to them and ask that question. I know that for many of the kids that they work with, they start when they are in their infancy, before 12 months old, and do in-home visitations. And so that is often where they fill in the gap prior to school age. And for that particular story, I'll reach out for them. It sounded like they had been providing services for a number of years prior to him being eligible for school services.
Children that are covered under the special education law are eligible from birth through 22. And so as soon as he's born and there's an assessment done, the school district is obligated to pay for his whole program. So I'd like to know what additional things that we might be doing for him.
Sure.
Okay. Any further questions?
Can I add just one real quick closing comment? So the presentation provided by Joy and Kyla is a foundational piece of the work that Human Services Committee works on through the year, and that this council entrusts that committee to do that work to help prioritize and fund the service providers in our community, and those service providers that provide help to residents of Auburn. So just a heads up that we are looking to schedule an October convening of City Council and the Human Services Committee. And just like we do with Planning Commission occasionally, where it's just a general conversation to share experiences and to talk to each other without a heavy recommendation in front of either body. So just a heads up that that's before City Council shortly.
Thank you. Thank you. Tyler, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, that is the end of the Wellness Committee, so I'll turn it back over to Deputy Mayor Colosa.
Okay. We're gonna take a 5-minute break, 6-minute break, because the mayor has a birthday tomorrow.
Oh, joy.
He has a birthday.
Is it I thought it was today.
So, for your birthday, this is
Yeah.
for you, so
Yeah.
happy birthday.
Should we
early.
sing?
You want to sing?
Yeah.
Let's sing.
Happy
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nancy Mayor. Happy birthday to you. Cha-cha-cha.
Okay, we're on our break now, you guys.
We wanted
Okay.
to-
Shout
we wanted
out.
to celebrate. You're not going to
All
be
you've
here.
got left is your matrix.
Yeah, I know, but we need after that singing, we have to go.
Important in the meeting.
Is this dinner or?
You have a spare one?
Oh, no, thank you.
How are you?
I'm fine. John Holman, Gerald Smiley. Glad to Smiley? Glad to meet you, sir.
Other than the fact that we didn't even light the candles. No.
We don't want to have the
Sprinklers
VRFA
go
down
off.
here.
Here. No, I went to Central Washington, but my daughter went to WSU for 9 years, and so I'm kind of a many years, you have law school in there.
Is this gentleman out here, can you?
How are you?
Yeah, he said, business like Canada.
We got too many resources.
Oh, so with
Last year, that conversation.
she said it's right, she said right next to me.
I will.
Okay.
I will. Slowly, then to it, but it's a definite.
Bless you. So from birth, any special education, OT, the school districts, because I contracted directly with Auburn City Council.
Yeah, but isn't this guy here?
So, and then the services that you don't cover, which there aren't any, because you don't even have to have insurance, are covered by your medical insurance if you want more intervention. And so us spending money on PIC's the same way, it's a joke. It's all covered by something, then just doing it. I have read places like the food bank are not covered by anything, but those places that have access to medical insurance, and the school districts by law have to pay it, have to pay it. So they'll never get back to me, just like before. It's not to be on anything. What's that? It's gonna take us 15 minutes to do it. I gotta get home. I'm painting. Oh, yeah.
You need to take these home with you.
How is your weight loss program going? Well, you walk around the mall.
I do, but it's not causing any weight problem because they have a Cinnabon store there.
I don't go that way because of that. Ron would buy a
It's right in the
bunch of them.
middle.
So then why do you even go? If you didn't walk, then you wouldn't eat the Cinnabon.
Well, I need to walk to get my strength back, but
Well, you just hire people to take your fence down. You should have taken your own fence down.
the
Number 8?
but the
Okay, the meeting will come back to order, please.
curbs and things to trip on.
Are there any other discussion items from the council? Any new business from the council? We will now go to the matrix then. And it looks like we can delete item 5 from the matrix since it's covered tonight. Then we've got 3 TBDs. Can council provide any dates for those?
Number 7, I had a meeting tonight, and they're going to be giving us a report later on, because the report somehow, we didn't get it, so we'll be getting it. Chief Lee talked to the right person.
Chief Pearson.
I mean Pearson, I keep calling him Chief Lee. So he'll be bringing it to us at our next study session.
At the next one?
Hopefully, hopefully.
Well, they got the data, there should be
Yeah,
a
they
problem.
have it already. so.
So therefore,
Mark,
the
is that
studies-
correct?
Mark?
I mean,
Steve.
Steve, is that correct, or do
Sorry,
you
I
know?
missed the first part of the conversation, so.
On the fireworks,
Yeah,
the
Command-
report.
Commander O'Neill has that report, and so I believe he has that ready to go.
So the next study session would be
The 26th,
August 26th. So,
unless you want to go just on uni services, which would be September 23rd.
and I think the sooner the better. Because we do have some concerned citizens, and it'd just be good to get the data.
August 26th.
Okay, item 7 is now August 26th. Metro bus site,
There's
That's going to be TBD for quite a while.
nothing.
will it?
updated.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to get information from Metro on that. They're not even at that point where they're going to make a decision yet, so.
Okay. Item 6, TBD. No smoking or vaping
Oh,
in city parks.
That, we don't have a date yet. We need to still, there's still some more stuff that we have to do.
Okay. Does council have any items that they want to add or recommend adding? Okay, hearing none. We're adjourned.